So today I'm going to do a blind react to some mental health TikToks. So without further ado, let's start. This is very true, although it's definitely describing the experience in a child and adolescent ward more than a general adult ward. But I've seen all of those behaviors in newly admitted patients, especially the frequent attenders.
What's poppin'? Don't mind me just watching.
What did he say?
What's being described here is a one-to-one special, which is where a mental health nurse has to keep the patient within sight at all times. This is used when there is concern that the patient may be a risk to themselves or others. Is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. But it is better to be uncomfortable than to harm oneself or others.
Things in the psych ward that we are definitely not allowed. So first of all, we're not allowed spray deodorant, so we have to have the stinky, lovely roll-on deodorants.
There are two main reasons for this. Firstly, if you combine a spray-on deodorant with a lighter or match, you can create a makeshift flamethrower and create a risk to yourselves and others. I've treated several patients who have set themselves on fire or tried to set staff or other patients on fire while in patients on psychiatric wards. And that's just a horrible experience for everyone involved. Secondly, people can try to inhale the deodorant to get high, and that can result in sudden death on the ward. I've had patients die from huffing deodorant and other sprays, so this is a very real risk. Mandating that patients only use roll-on deodorants is a small price to pay for saving lives.
Our windows only open a certain amount, so we literally cannot get out. I don't have an item to show you because obviously we're not allowed them on the ward, but we are definitely 100% not allowed razors. Bring on the hair removal cream. We're not allowed any glass items, everything has to be plastic.
I mean, the reason for the windows not being able to open fully is obvious, I would assume. In terms of the razors, again, if you give them razors, pencil sharpeners, which aren't modified, etc., the blades will be used for self-harm or they'll be swallowed and result in internal bleeding and perforation, which can be fatal even if you treat it properly. And the lack of glass is obviously to prevent people shattering the glass and using pieces of shattered glass to harm themselves. Some units don't have plastic, but instead they have shatterproof glass, which while it will still break, doesn't break into dangerous shards of glass. So you can scratch yourself, but it's very difficult to give yourself a life-threatening cut or to stab someone else. And this is a very important consideration because I have been on wards where patients have attacked other patients and tried to murder them. And every year patients are murdered by other patients on psych wards.
We are not allowed blue tack, chewing gum, or anything sticky or that can be put into locks.
Distressed and psychotic patients will do almost anything in their distress, including barricading themselves in somewhere. And one of the ways that they can try and affect that is to block the locks so that people can't open the doors from the outside. And obviously, chewing gum, etc., are all things that people have tried to use to block locks. So of course we stop it. In addition to which, people can try and self-terminate with chewing gum. I won't go into the details of how they can do that for obvious reasons. But, suffice it to say that people accidentally choke to death on chewing gum every year. So if you're intending to use it to harm yourself, that is certainly possible.
And finally, we can have TV remotes and things with batteries in, but they have to be glued in so we cannot access them. So when the battery dies, it takes about 3 days for maintenance to fix it.
Yes, and that's because swallowing batteries is a common form of attempted self-harm. And batteries which are in your digestive system, if they leak, can cause tremendously dangerous medical situations, including perforation, peritonitis, and again, even with prompt medical treatment, that can kill you days after the battery is swallowed. So again, The batteries are glued in because if they weren't, there would be an epidemic of people swallowing them, self-harming, and potentially dying. That's pretty hardcore. I've seen that sort of thing in forensic units and in some units where people who are at very, very high risk go. But not in a normal psychiatric ward, where, the vast majority of patients would go. So I wonder where this person was, that this was standard practice. Again, I think in America, there's a lot more of this incredibly restrictive, quite humiliating practice. Whereas in Europe, I think there tends to be an awful lot more emphasis on treating people in the least restrictive way possible and maximizing their dignity, even sometimes at the cost of safety. But in America, maybe because it's so much more litigious, they just seem to go to the extreme of checking everything in a way which I think often would harm people's mental health. So I can only imagine that she's talking about an American experience, which seems excessive to me.
Write your snap on this really quick.
Yeah, I think this is referring to the fact that oftentimes patients are discouraged from forming very close relationships with other inpatients. There are multiple reasons for this. One is that you should focus on your own recovery. The second is that some patients can be quite predatory and quite harmful to the health of others, and other patients are quite vulnerable. And you can find that the vulnerable patients then become crutches or sometimes the prey of the more manipulative, predatory patients when they leave hospital. And so I think that's what's really going on there. And of course, patients completely breach that all the time. They just give each other their, Snapchat IDs and whatever else. And then you find that they're in contact with each other outside. And in a few cases, they actually form intimate relationships and so on and so forth, which is, fine. That's their choice. But then not infrequently that can end in very regrettable situations where patients will stalk each other and harm each other and engage in both mentally and physically abusive behavior. So that's the reasoning behind that kind of ban. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons so that you'll be notified when I release further psychology and reaction videos. I hope you found this reaction video interesting and informative, and until we meet again, take care of yourselves and each other.